The Galactic Empire's high strategic war room was usually a place where dignified silence reigned, broken only by the soft clicking of crystalline data tablets or the low thrum of planetary shields adjusting their frequencies. Tonight, however, the chamber vibrated with a jittery, uneven energy, as if the very walls sensed that something deeply unwise was about to occur. Dozens of alien commanders sat around the curved amphitheater, their eyes fixed on a hovering hologram at the center. A human woman, 35 years old, calmly sipping tea on a small balcony somewhere on Earth, as if the galaxy were not sharpening knives behind her back. Her dark hair fell loosely over her shoulders. Her expression was peaceful, almost gentle, the type of face one would trust with a secret, right before discovering she had already learned 10 more. The caption beneath the image read only 2 words: The Alibaba Yaga. High General Zyralt of the ZYRR Dominion cleared his throat, producing a wet clicking sound that made several younger officers flinch. This, he declared, gesturing sharply toward the hologram, is the human who has dismantled 8 of our covert operations, stolen 3 of our encryption cores, hijacked an entire dreadnought by herself, and, he inhaled dramatically, sent our best assassins back home crying. Crying. Actual tears. Salty. His gills fluttered in disgust, as though the memory physically offended him. Across the chamber, the Vral monk diplomat slowly raised a hand, his elongated fingers folding gracefully. General, he murmured, voice soft. Our ancient teachings say never to challenge a creature who smiles when cornered. His wide obsidian eyes blinked in serene warning. And humans smile often. A chittering ripple of uneasy agreement ran along the benches. Most species in the room still held the outdated belief that humans were clumsy, impulsive, overly emotional mammals barely worthy of mid-tier sentience. Yet every single time the Empire touched Earth's affairs, something unpredictable happened. Something educational. Something terrifying. And lately that terror had become very specifically focused on one polite, soft-spoken woman whom Terrans called different names: operative, strategist, ghost, but whom the galaxy had quietly renamed after an old Earth legend of a woman who came from the woods and never left witnesses. Grork Commander Ralvik, a broad beast of a reptilian officer, leaned forward, claws tapping anxiously against the table. I watched her defeat our Alpha boarding unit, he rumbled, his spine-tail twitching. She apologized to them while doing it. She said, his voice cracked. I'm so sorry this is happening, please don't take it personally. That is not normal tactical behavior. A Valori scientist raised a tendril. Humans often say contradictory things. Our studies indicate this may be sarcasm. The room groaned collectively. Ever since encountering humans, entire branches of xenolinguistics had been destroyed and rebuilt from scratch, trying to interpret phrases like, no worries, we're fine, and trust me. Translation engines still refused to fully process the American idiom, hold my beer, which had preceded 7 major catastrophes, and at least 1 unexpected treaty. General Zyralt pounded the table. Sarcasm or not, she has disrupted Empire stability for too long. The Council demands action. Therefore, we will eliminate her swiftly, before she becomes a threat beyond containment. This statement was met with silence so deep it could have suffocated a lesser creature. Even the war room's temperature regulators hesitated mid-cycle, as if unsure whether to cool or warm the air for the forthcoming disaster. Only the Vral monk spoke, voice trembling with an emotion rare for his species. Pity. General, humans do not respond to threats the way we expect. They behave kindly until pushed. Then they reveal another nature. But it was too late. Zyralt's order flashed across the fleet channels. Terminate the human designation. Alibaba Yaga. Far away on Earth, in a quiet apartment overlooking a small city street, the woman in the hologram, whose real name few people knew and even fewer dared to speak, stood barefoot in her kitchen, stirring honey into her tea. Her posture was relaxed, her movements deliberate and unhurried, the embodiment of someone who cherished slow mornings and soft music. A small radio on the counter played an old American country song, something warm and nostalgic. The sun poured through the window in gentle waves, illuminating the faint scars across her knuckles, memories she never discussed. Her wristband vibrated once. A coded alert, subtle and discreet. She glanced at it, and a soft sigh escaped her lips, not annoyed, not afraid, only mildly disappointed, like someone whose peaceful weekend had just been interrupted by yet another uninvited chore. "Oh," she murmured, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "So they finally chose me." Her tone carried no pride, no arrogance, just inevitability. She set the spoon down carefully, as though the universe hadn't just declared war on her. Outside, pigeons fluttered near the balcony, scattering at the shift in her posture. Even the cat she often fed, a round lazy tabby, stared at her with sudden, inexplicable concern, ears flattening as if it sensed an atmospheric change that didn't belong to weather. She walked to her desk and sat gracefully, fingers gliding across the console with almost musical precision. On screens across the empire, alarms began pinging in rhythm with her keystrokes, as if every tap of her fingertip sent a pulse through the galaxy. Troop movements froze. Surveillance systems flickered. Several command ships detected a signal they couldn't categorize, couldn't trace, couldn't block. The war room's holographic projector flickered once, twice, and stabilized. The woman's face appeared across the Empire network, calm and faintly apologetic, like a teacher calling in a student's parents about a discipline problem. She smiled gently, politely, as if greeting old acquaintances. Her voice, when she spoke, was soft, soothing, unmistakably human. "Hello," she said. "I heard you're looking for me." Officers gasped. Some recoiled. The Vral monk bowed his head, whispering prayers. She continued, still smiling. "Before you send anyone, I'd like to make one request." Fingers trembled above consoles. No one dared speak. Her eyes warmed, but something colder lived beneath. "Please bring enough ships this time." The last group left in tears. A soft, friendly smile spread across her face, a smile that made every species with survival instincts flinch. The transmission cut, leaving the war room soaked in silent dread. Zyralt steadied himself on the table, throat clicking uncontrollably, as if trying to swallow fear and pride at the same time. Somewhere in the galaxy, thousands of soldiers wondered why their weapons suddenly felt heavier. And far above Earth, in the shadow between two drifting satellites, a shape uncloaked, something human-built that should not have been there, watching, waiting, listening for the Empire's next move. The high strategic war room had weathered rebellions, cosmic storms, and 6 attempted coups, but nothing in its long history prepared it for the 32 seconds following the woman's message. Silence did not merely fall, it crashed, buckling the emotional floor beneath every officer. Screens still flickered where her calm face had disappeared, the quiet echo of her polite smile lingering like the aftertaste of poison disguised as candy. General Zyralt stared into the fading hologram, throat clicking wildly, unable to form the words that pride once made so effortless. Around him the other commanders shifted, their bodies reacting with instinctive dread. Reptilians coiled tighter, insectoids flattened their wings, aquatic species dried instantly under their own stress heat. A species-wide response, the unmistakable biological recognition of a predator hidden behind civility. It was the monk diplomat who dared speak first, his voice a trembling whisper. "A smile," he murmured, "is the human way of saying they have already chosen the battlefield." But Zyralt snapped back, more from fear than authority. It was a bluff. An emotional display. Humans excel at dramatics. His words felt empty, and they both knew it. Grork Commander Ralvik hunched low, scales twitching. "General, with respect, the last time we ignored a human message, they detonated our entire siege line using their own ships, which they had conveniently sabotaged months earlier just in case. These creatures prepare retaliation before conflict even begins." His claws tapped anxiously. "And she sent an emoji." A screech erupted from the Valori scientist's console. "General, the message caused a spike across all our threat analysis systems. Even our psychological warfare matrix crashed twice trying to interpret her tone." The screen behind him displayed a translation attempt, message classification, uncertain, tone indicators, polite threat / sarcastic courtesy / predatory humor / unknown. A wave of discomfort rippled through the chamber. Aliens feared weapons. They feared armies. But nothing terrified them like the parts of humanity they still didn't understand. On Earth, the woman at the center of their panic did nothing extraordinary. She did not pace, she did not sharpen knives, she did not prepare monologues. Instead, she rinsed out her teacup and placed it gently on the counter, as if tidiness mattered more than the incoming storm. Her movements were soft, precise, almost domestic. A polite assassin with an orderly kitchen. She stepped onto her balcony, the early wind brushing her hair. Below her apartment, life continued as usual. Cars rolled by, people chatted on sidewalks, a vendor yelled about fresh bagels. Humans excelled at appearing ordinary. It was their favorite camouflage. She took a slow breath, savoring Earth's air, a scent she knew she might not enjoy again for a while. Her wristband buzzed again, another encrypted ping, this one from her own people. She glanced at the screen. Empire response. Tactical confusion detected. Proceed as planned. She smiled faintly, though not with joy. Her job required no joy. Only completion. Only precision. Meanwhile, back in the war room, panic blossomed into full bloom. Zyralt paced in sharp, irritated circles, his gills flaring. "Deploy the Shadow Legion," he barked. 300 of our finest. They will neutralize her quickly." A horrified gasp rippled along the commanders. The Shadow Legion was the Empire's apex force, unmatched across 7 star systems. Sending them after a single human seemed excessive, which was precisely why everyone felt it still wasn't enough. The Vral monk bowed his head in dismay. "General, you are not hunting a soldier. You are provoking a myth." But Zyralt refused to listen. Pride blinded his sense. Arrogance bruised his judgment. "She is one woman," he snapped. "One. The Empire does not tremble before Terrans with teacups." But across their screens, the image of that teacup lingered. A gentle reminder that humans fought wars with their minds long before lifting any weapon. The fleet mobilized within minutes. Warships shifted formation, engines igniting in synchronized fury, bathing the darkness of space in cold blue light. The Shadow Legion boarded their dropships, wearing armor that had never known defeat. Their commander, a towering insectoid, gave a confident hiss. "We will return with her head, General." The war room erupted with uneasy applause, but the Vral monk only whispered, "Then you won't return at all." Their ships departed, slicing through the void like knives drawn by fate. High above Earth, cloaked beyond sensor reach, the Empire's squadron aligned itself with predatory precision. Their intelligence feeds displayed the woman's location, a modest apartment in a quiet neighborhood. She stood in her living room now, adjusting the sleeves of her simple sweater, preparing for unavoidable company. The attack began without fanfare. A pinpoint breach in the upper atmosphere, a series of muted flashes, and the Shadow Legion descended like a silent avalanche. They crashed through her rooftop in perfect formation, cutting through supports, sealing exits, ready for instant killstrike. Their boots hit the wooden floor with synchronized thuds that reverberated through her small home. She turned slowly, expression polite, as though someone had merely knocked. "Hello," she said softly. "I made tea if anyone wants to talk instead." That single line would later be dissected by alien historians for decades. The first soldier lunged. She flowed aside with impossible grace, her movements gentle, even tender, as though she feared harming the furniture more than the invaders. In seconds, she dismantled the front line without a weapon, redirecting strikes, applying pressure, disabling joints with the kind of efficiency that felt closer to choreography than combat. She apologized each time someone hit a wall. "Sorry, that looked like it hurt. You really should stretch more." These words seemed harmless, but to aliens unused to human banter, they sounded like elegant death sentences. The Legion's commander roared and activated full assault mode. Her eyes softened. "Oh no, please don't do that." But he did. And even before he struck, he lost. She guided his momentum, twisted effortlessly, and pinned him to the ground with a quiet sigh. Within minutes, 300 elite soldiers lay defeated, but alive, humiliated rather than destroyed. She sat on the edge of her couch, brushing a bit of drywall off her shoulder. Far above, the Empire watched through helmet feeds, horror expanding like a black hole. "General," a young officer stammered. "She's not killing them. She's lecturing them about hydration." And indeed she was. "Water is important," she told a groaning soldier. "Fear dries you out." Then she looked straight into a fallen helmet camera. The Empire felt her gaze pierce them. "I believe," she said warmly. "It's my turn now." In orbit, unnoticed until this moment, an unauthorized signal began infiltrating the Empire fleet systems. A handshake protocol. Human-made. Human-coded. Human-planned. And somewhere deep in their communication grid, a hidden file activated automatically. The Empire's orbital fleet did not understand what the signal meant at first. It threaded itself through their systems like a polite guest asking to enter a home. Soft, unassuming, wrapped in harmless encryption patterns that looked almost decorative. Nothing about it screamed intrusion. Nothing about it resembled aggression. It simply requested access, which was precisely why every computer granted it without hesitation. All through the fleet, screens flickered faintly, as if unsure whether to warn or welcome the presence slipping through their circuits. General Zyralt, watching from the war room, felt a chill ripple across his gills. "What did she inject into our systems?" he demanded, voice trembling beneath the edges of strained authority. The analysts scrambled, their tentacles and claws dancing frantically over controls. But every time they tried identifying the foreign code, the system returned the same baffling response. Request acknowledged, human protocol verified. Ralvik's scales rattled. "She is hacking us with courtesy," he whispered, as though the words themselves were sacrilege. Meanwhile, aboard the command cruiser hovering above Earth, the Shadow Legion's helmet feeds continued broadcasting the aftermath of their humiliation. The Baba Yaga, still barefoot, still calm, stepped lightly through the wreckage of her living room, placing cushions back onto the couch with gentle precision. It was a surreal image, the galaxy's deadliest woman tidying after a massacre she delivered with kindness. She paused at a cracked picture frame, straightened it, and brushed dust from its surface before lifting her eyes toward the nearest helmet. Her voice was soft, almost affectionate. "I hope your commander is comfortable. I placed him on the couch. His armor dented my floor." If she intended it as humor, aliens could not tell. To them, it sounded like an omen. Without warning, the entire wall behind her dissolved into shimmering light as her wristband activated. A holographic interface spread outward, displaying data from across the Empire. Troop deployments, communication lines, fleet positions. She moved through it with slow, deliberate motions, each fingertip gliding as though tracing constellations. Within seconds, she was reading Empire secrets she should not have known existed. General Zyralt recoiled. "How is she accessing our internal grid?" The monk simply folded his hands. "Humans study their enemies long before their enemies know they are being observed." Back on Earth, she leaned against her desk, eyes reflecting the swirling holograms. Another encrypted message flashed onto her screen. This one from deep beneath the surface of Earth, from a council whose existence most nations denied even to themselves. The message bore no greeting, no explanation. Only 3 words. "The curtain drops." She inhaled slowly, letting that weight settle inside her. Memories flickered. Training beneath fluorescent lights in underground bunkers, silent evaluations where failure meant disappearance. The day she learned the galaxy considered her people fragile simply because humans smiled easily. That misconception became humanity's greatest weapon. She understood it better than anyone. A second message followed. "Proceed to Phase 3. The galaxy is watching." She closed her eyes briefly, not in hesitation, only in acknowledgement of inevitability. When she opened them, her expression softened into something warm and disarming. "All right," she whispered, voice carrying across the intercepted feed. "Let's finish this." In the war room, alien panic swelled as they watched her step onto her balcony. A soft breeze lifted her hair as she looked skyward. "You were very rude entering my home," she murmured, not with anger, but with disapproval that felt somehow worse. "So I think it's only fair I visit yours." Then she stepped forward, and vanished. Zyralt shouted, slamming his claws onto the table. "What happened?" Where did she go? The valiant attempt to trace her came too late. A blip appeared aboard the Empire's flagship cruiser, right outside the primary command corridor. Soldiers stationed there froze, unable to reconcile reality with the phantom appearing before them. She materialized silently, like a gentle shadow taking form. Her posture remained relaxed, almost graceful. Her smile, faint and polite, made every alien in the hallway take one collective step back. "I knocked," she said cheerfully. "No one answered. I assumed you were busy." A soldier panicked and fired. She slipped aside, disappointment crossing her face as the plasma bolt scorched the wall. "Please don't do that," she sighed. "It makes conversations awkward." Her next movements were poetry, subtle shifts of weight, hands flowing like river water. She disarmed 3 guards without drawing blood, guiding their bodies to the ground with almost nurturing care. She whispered apologies amid every counter, as if their pain offended her more than the attack itself. The last guard dropped his weapon and surrendered outright, trembling so violently his armor clattered. She patted his shoulder kindly. "Good choice." General Zyralt watched in horror as she strolled through the flagship corridors, leaving behind a trail not of corpses, but of astonished, incapacitated soldiers who had no idea how they had lost. She was a contradiction carved into human form, courteous yet devastating, warm yet mercilessly efficient. The deeper she ventured, the clearer it became that she knew the ship better than the officers serving on it. Every sealed door opened for her. Every surveillance system flickered off as she approached. She had memorized every deck layout, every failsafe, every blind spot years before the Empire realized she existed. "How does she know our ship's structure?" a panicked officer cried. Ralvik's voice quivered. "It is possible. She infiltrated our archives decades ago." Zyralt snarled. "Impossible." But they all saw the truth unfolding. She had not hacked their systems tonight. She had prepared long ago. Within minutes, she reached the heart of the cruiser, the throne platform where the Emperor himself oversaw military operations. The chamber was a grand circle of polished obsidian, decorated with banners proclaiming victory and dominance. Yet in that moment, the room felt absurdly small. The Emperor, a towering figure wrapped in ceremonial armor, straightened as she stepped inside. He opened his mouth to speak, but she raised a finger politely, stopping him mid-syllable. "Please," she said gently, "don't start with human intruder. It's very repetitive." The Emperor swallowed, thrown off balance. "We will negotiate." "No," she said, almost kindly. "You had your chance when you sent 300 soldiers to a woman's living room." She stepped closer. With each footfall, the Emperor's posture wilted. Her presence was quiet, unthreatening, yet somehow more dangerous than an entire fleet. She halted at the throne's base. "You think I came to kill you," she murmured. "But humans don't start wars by eliminating kings." Her eyes glimmered with something sharp and ancient. "We start wars by revealing the trap you walked into." Above the fleet, human ships decloaked, one after another, hundreds appearing like ghosts stepping into moonlight. And in that moment, the Emperor understood just how thoroughly humanity had prepared. The woman looked at him, voice soft as silk. "Phase 4 begins now." For a moment, the Emperor could not breathe. The air around him shifted as the human ships decloaked across the stars like a constellation awakening with malicious purpose. Hundreds of vessels, sleek and sharp, glimmered with the cold, careful brilliance of a species that never wasted movement or threats. They arranged themselves in a deliberate pattern that no alien mind recognized, but every alien instinct feared. It was not a battle formation. It was a message. You are surrounded. You are always surrounded. The Baba Yaga stood at the foot of the imperial throne, her posture relaxed, her hands loosely at her sides, as though she were waiting for a bus rather than orchestrating the most humiliating strategic reversal in the Empire's history. Her gaze drifted across the chamber, soft yet unreadable. "I gave you warnings," she murmured, her voice a calm ripple through the storm of panic. "Humans don't like being hunted. We react, unpredictably." The Emperor struggled to stand fully upright. His armor, crafted to intimidate, now felt like a cage. We can discuss a ceasefire, he choked out. A treaty. Something mutually acceptable. She almost smiled, almost. Mutually acceptable, she repeated, as if tasting the words. Is that what you call sending an execution squad into my home? Her tone was gentle, but every syllable slid like a blade beneath the skin. Your definition of diplomacy is charmingly violent. Screens around them lit with frantic alerts as alien officers screamed through the channels. None of their fleets could power weapons. Engines refused to prime. Shield matrices flickered like dying candles. Our systems are shutting down. A voice cried. We have no control. The Emperor stared up at the woman, dread widening his eyes. What did you do? She stepped forward, each footfall echoing like a countdown. You forgot something essential, she said softly. Humans don't prepare for battles the moment they begin. We prepare while you're still deciding whether we matter. Her fingers brushed along a nearby console. Instantly, a hologram of cascading data filled the room. Empire schematics, fleet rosters, internal passwords, tactical blueprints. She had known everything. For years. Perhaps decades. This, she said, tapping a floating line of code, is a peace treaty I've inserted into your central command AI. A simple rule. Another tap. The hologram realigned, glowing with chilling calm. Any Imperial weapon aimed at a human target automatically powers down. The Emperor's jaw slackened. You forced peace, through sabotage. No, she met his gaze, and something ancient burned behind her eyes. I forced restraint. If you truly want peace, you don't need weapons to enforce it. Her words hit harder than any blade. The chamber filled with the quiet horror of powerlessness, a horror the Empire had inflicted upon countless worlds, now redirected like a mirror held too close to the sun. Beneath the surface of controlled calm, her voice thickened with a sorrow few beings would recognize. This could all have been avoided, she whispered, if you had simply left my people alone. A ripple of static buzzed across a nearby screen. The Emperor's generals appeared, panicked, pleading. Your Majesty, the human ships are transmitting orders to our defense nets, orders we can't override. Our weapons refuse to lock. Our archives are being rewritten. The Emperor shouted over them. Enough. His voice cracked like brittle stone. He turned back to her, desperation replacing arrogance. What do you want? Conquest? Tribute? Surrender? She tilted her head, as though contemplating a child's question. I want you to understand something. She walked up the steps toward him, moving with steady grace. Each step brought her closer until she stood only an arm's length away. Humans look fragile. Soft. Distracted by music, humor, old movies, street food, pointless arguments, and yet. She leaned in slightly, her tone dropping into something far colder. Underestimate us once and we smile. Underestimate us twice, and we prepare. Underestimate us a third time. She rested her fingers lightly against his armor, just over the imperial crest. And we end empires. The Emperor shuddered under her touch. Never in his life had a gesture so small carried such devastating weight. She didn't threaten. She didn't gloat. She simply told the truth. Her wristband pulsed once. A signal from Earth's hidden council. The time had come. She stepped back, her voice resuming that soft, almost tender cadence. The galaxy thinks humans fear war. They're wrong. Humans fear losing their homes, their children, their strangers, their songs, their little chaotic comforts. But war. A slow, chilling smile curved her lips. War is just another problem we solve creatively. She turned toward the main viewport where the human fleet hovered like silent judges. The sight was awe-inspiring, terrifying in its restraint. No lasers fired. No missiles launched. They simply waited. Their stillness alone was enough to suffocate rebellion. In the war room aboard the flagship, the monk whispered, "May the stars protect us." The Emperor swallowed hard. What happens now? She faced him again. What happens now is entirely your choice. She clasped her hands behind her back, standing with calm authority. Earth will not invade. We do not want your territory. We don't want your slaves or your resources or your crown. A hint of wry humor touched her voice. We barely manage our own schedules. Why would we want yours? Ralvik's image appeared on a nearby screen, trembling. Then, what do you want from us? Her response was a whisper steeped in human gravity. For you to never put my name on a list again. A long silence swallowed the chamber. She stepped onto the platform's center, sending one final command from her wristband. Empire ships shut down to standby mode. Weapons folded away like obedient animals. Defense grids gently powered off. A galaxy built on domination was rendered harmless, not through annihilation, but through forced peace. She turned back one last time, her expression softening in a way no alien could decipher. Earth prefers peace. Always has. But if you force us to choose... Her eyes hardened with the weight of history. We choose survival. Every time. Without another word, she pressed a device on her wrist. Light enveloped her body. She vanished from the throne room, leaving only silence in her wake. The Emperor collapsed into his seat, armor clattering, as the reality of what had happened finally crashed over him. His empire lived, but no longer belonged to him. Far above, on her returning ship, she stood by the window, watching the stars drift like scattered embers. She sipped a small cup of coffee, savoring the warmth. This, she murmured into the quiet cabin, was for putting my name in red. And somewhere deep in the Empire's crippled grid, a final hidden message activated across every channel. Earth has spoken.